Hello, my name is S.K. Williams, and yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. I missed St. Patrick's Day. In fact, last week I missed posting my second Linton reflection. It couldn't be helped. I was called away and was away for a week. But next week, I shall post my third and my fourth Linton reflection. This week I will post the second, and the actual second week that I was supposed to will have to be blank. I also wasn't able to record a proper St. Patrick's Day address, so I'm recording it on my old computer now. This channel still has restrictions on it, so I'm not going to say much. But I will say this. St. Patrick was a great man of God, who came from England or Wales, from a wealthy family, was selfish, full of indolence and greed, unconcerned with the world, until he was captured and made a slave in Ireland. He escaped his slavery in Ireland in quite a miraculous way, returned to Britain, but then he pursued ordination, and he went back to Ireland to preach to the very people who had enslaved him, and he converted a nation. It is now a nation abandoning its Catholic faith and Christianity altogether. Much like most of the Western world, it is secularizing. In our parlance today, we are abandoning religion ostentatiously. We are abandoning religion and replacing religion with reason. But as we abandon religion for reason, we find people becoming less and less actually rational. More and more, they're becoming unhappy with the state of their own lives, the world, and their limitations. They're not happy with who they are. They start dyeing their hair in natural colors, piercing themselves, tattooing themselves, a constant. They keep demanding that we start identifying them in new ways, demanding that the core of their being is their identity. They even reject their own biological gender, which we now have to say is assigned to them at birth, and that they can be assigned the wrong gender. We are going mad in our rational, not religious world. And that is because we aren't really rational. We simply call being rational the rejection of religion, an embrace of humanism and materialism. But what if the assumptions of humanism and materialism are wrong? And what if we're wrong about secularism? What if secularism isn't the lack of a religion or neutrality toward religion, but is a religion in its own right, and a religion based upon false foundations? You see, I am not so arrogant as to say only Christian civilization has ever produced greatness. But I have a very different view of religion than most in this modern world. I am a Christian, but I don't think that Christianity is simply the one true religion, TM, and all others are simply false or fables. Rather, I think that there is truth to every major world religion, including secularism. And I do see secularism as a religion, because I don't think of religion as just belief in gods or the supernatural. But the world religions are a mix of truth and error. And sometimes the differences between the religions rest on the different ways of explaining the same thing. Sometimes it's not even so much that they disagree, it is that they simply differ in how they explain things or the cultural context to which they're understood. Now, as a Christian, I do believe that Christianity It contains the fullness of truth in regards to what must be understood spiritually to ground humanity. I don't think Christianity has the truth of everything. It's not designed to have the truth of everything. But we can incorporate future knowledge into our Christian perspectives. But I don't just dismiss other cultures. Even ones that directly contradict Christianity will have truth to them, even if, as a Christian, I must reject the parts of them that conflict with Christianity. C.S. Lewis once said that to be a Christian does not mean that one must reject all other religions as simply false. One need only reject the parts of those religions that contradict Christianity. And I agree with that. And I don't think that Lewis was saying that we must believe all religions are equally true except where they contradict Christianity. You're, of course, free to contradict a religion in any part, even if it doesn't contradict Christianity, and remain a Christian as well. And there are things within various world religions that are spoken of, that are not spoken of or addressed in Christianity. And one can believe them or not. And that's fine. Just as it's fine for followers of those other religions to think certain parts of Christianity are false. I would expect that. But you will notice a universality to the various world religions. We make a lot of talk, especially in atheist or secularist circles, about how these religions are all mutually exclusive and disagree. But they also agree a great deal, and there's far more agreement within the world's great religious traditions than disagreements. With the exception being the religion we call secularism, the religion that pretends to not be a religion. And even there's more overlap than people are comfortable admitting. But not all religions are equally true, and even when they speak of true things at their core, will sometimes distort them. And I think that's why we should be more discerning in religion, because even within something like Christianity, it's not homogeneous and you have disagreements. I don't really think that our modern society's division between philosophy and religion as two distinct things is true. I think that religion and philosophy are the same thing. And because of that, I think it's wrong to ask people to lay aside their religious beliefs and embrace secular values when secular values are just religious values. And in the end, secularism has not led to a better world, it has led to a more tyrannical and authoritarian world. Secularism gave rise to the Soviet Union, and it was so bad that modern secularists pretend that using their paradigm of religion being the opposite of secularism, and that secularism means you have no religion. The Soviet Union is now imagined as a theocratic state run by religion. And the reason that it didn't oppress religion, it oppressed other religion. You had to have the one true religion of Marxism, and true secularism has never been tried. But we're seeing secularism being tried in Europe now, and Canada has a province of Quebec that wants to make public prayer illegal, all because it's an affront to secular values otherwise. And we notice that it's being authoritarian again. Is the modern push towards secularism also going to be branded really a form of religion so that true secularism will never be tried once its evil is fully exposed as such? Because it's a sham to do so. If secularism is truly the opposite of religion, then the Soviet state was not religious, it was secular. And I agree that the Soviet Union was religious. But that's because secularism is a religion, and it makes demands of us. And ultimately, secularism is based on humanism, a life-affirming philosophy that rejects religion with its focus on death and the afterlife, and focuses on making life better here, but always ends up making life worse here, and always ends up devaluing human life and promoting things like abortion and ex-marriage and death with dignity. You don't find in secularism happiness. or joy or freedom. You find a revival of the same behaviors we saw with pagans who, yes, they worship multiple gods, but their gods were the gods that came out of nature. They were not gods who created nature. And they were gods that acted woefully human. And they were gods who promoted the values that we see in secularism. This is why secularists love the Greeks and Romans. But let's look at the reality. St. Patrick went to Ireland and converted it to Christ. And now there's been a sustained effort to vilify Christianity in the media and academia and amongst various powerful people, and it's worked largely. We now associate Catholic priests with child abuse. We now associate churches with evils and wars and intolerance and hate. But these are unfair. Christian clergy don't go about abusing children on average, and neither does the Catholic Church. There's no major problem within the Catholic Church of this. There were actually a smaller percent of priests who engaged in that activity than there are in other professions. And yet now we equate them with it. And of course some, when I say this, will say, oh, it's not about how many there are, it's about the cover-up. But it's really not about the cover-up, since those same people who endlessly talk about the Catholic Church as some sort of child abuse haven never talk about the public schools that way or demand they be shut down. They in fact promote them and tell us that we're awful if we decide to homeschool our children. Even though there's a much higher rate of child abuse and a much larger degree of conspiratorial cover-up. And atheist organizations, humanist organizations, have covered up child abuse. And we don't hear about that in the media, and we don't equate being an atheist activist with child abuse. It's all a bit of a sham, really. But it's worked. The propaganda has worked because Christians have not stood up for themselves. But Christians must stand up for themselves, like St. Patrick. It doesn't matter that Christianity has been vilified and now is associated with evil. What matters is that Christianity is true, and those who are demonizing it are the ones that are truly evil. And we should be brave enough to say that, just as St. Patrick was. I don't have much else to say, so I shall take my leave of you now. Thank you, God bless, and goodbye.